The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Stephen Hawking. Think you know Sigma males, think again. For every story told about these enigmatic personalities, 10 myths rise to fill the gaps. And the craziest part? Most people don't even question them. Society loves to label what it doesn't understand, turning the quiet confidence of a Sigma into a breeding ground for wild assumptions. But here's the kicker. 90% of what you believe about them is probably as fake as a $3 bill. It's time to peel back the layers, bust some myths, and see Sigma males for who they actually are. Not the Hollywood version, not the internet's glorified loners. Spoiler alert, they're not Batman in disguise or some brooding rebel plotting against the world. They're just navigating life on their terms, leaving people guessing, and making some hilarious misconceptions along the way. Ready to dive in? Let's set the record straight. Number one, they lack emotions. One of the biggest lies floating around about Sigma males is that they're emotionless robots, walking through life with zero feelings and a heart made of stone. Let's crush that myth right now. Sigmas are not emotionless. They're masters of emotional discretion. They feel everything, sometimes even more deeply than the average person, but they're incredibly selective about who gets to see that side of them. It's not that they're cold, it's that they refuse to perform their emotions for the sake of appearances or approval. If you've ever interacted with a Sigma, you might think they're aloof because they don't react in the loud, dramatic ways people expect. But that's because they don't see the point in making their emotions a public spectacle. They process things internally, in their own time and space. A Sigma isn't the type to cry on someone's shoulder about their problems or vent for the sake of venting. Instead, they analyze their emotions like a detective solving a case, trying to understand what triggered them and how to deal with it. This guarded approach often gets misinterpreted as indifference, but the truth is the opposite. Sigmas guard their emotions because they're valuable. They won't waste their energy being vulnerable with people who haven't earned their trust. When they do open up, it's not half-hearted or superficial. It's raw, real, and deeply meaningful. But if you're expecting a dramatic display of affection or an outburst of anger, you'll be disappointed. Sigmas don't operate on emotional autopilot. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's depth. Beneath the calm surface is a storm of thoughts, feelings, and perspectives they carefully keep in check. To call them emotionless is to completely miss the intricate way they experience the world, quietly but profoundly. Number two, they hate authority. It's a common misconception that Sigma males hate authority. People often assume they're the type to flip tables, walk out of meetings, or rebel against anyone in charge just for the thrill of it. But that's not true at all. Sigmas don't hate authority, they hate incompetence parading as authority. There's a huge difference. If someone earns their respect through intelligence, leadership, or genuine capability, a Sigma has no problem following their lead. But if that authority figure is all ego and no substance, they'll quietly step aside and do things their own way. Sigmas have a deep-rooted need for independence, and this is where the misunderstanding comes from. They're not interested in playing power games or kissing up to someone just because they have a title. If a leader is making decisions that don't make sense, a Sigma won't fake loyalty. They'll question the system, not because they're rebellious for fun, but because they value logic and efficiency over blind obedience. To them, authority isn't about having power over others. It's about having the competence to lead. What makes them stand out is their ability to operate outside the system entirely. If the rules don't work, they'll find their own way, and they'll do it without announcing it to the world. Sigmas don't need a crowd to back them up, nor do they care if their choices look unconventional. They'll respect authority that deserves respect, but they won't hesitate to disregard it if it's holding them back. It's not defiance, it's discernment. They don't waste time fighting authority for the sake of it. They just won't tolerate mediocrity wearing a badge. For Sigmas, it's about results, not rank. Authority doesn't intimidate them, but incompetence, that's where they draw the line. Number three, they're mysterious because they want to be. The whole idea that Sigma males are mysterious on purpose is way off the mark. People love to think that their silence and reserved nature are part of some calculated plan to keep others guessing. But the truth is far simpler. They're just not interested in broadcasting their lives. A Sigma isn't sitting around thinking, how can I appear more enigmatic today? They're just living their life. And the mystery? That's everyone else's projection. Oversharing is not in their DNA. It's not because they're hiding something or trying to create an air of mystique. It's because they genuinely don't see the need to explain themselves to anyone. They don't chase attention. They don't seek validation. And they definitely don't feel the urge to narrate every detail of their lives like it's an episode of reality TV. To a Sigma, words are valuable, and if they don't serve a purpose, they're not worth saying. This quiet approach can make them seem like they have a secret agenda, but in reality, they're just selective about what they share and with whom. They don't need to prove themselves to strangers or win over people with a curated persona. Their focus is on living authentically, not impressing the masses. People often confuse silence with strategy, but for a Sigma, it's not a tactic, it's just their nature. They're not playing hard to get or trying to seem unattainable. They value privacy and believe that not everything needs to be out in the open. Their so-called mystery isn't an act. It's the result of a mindset that values depth, focus, and living without the constant need for external validation. If you find them intriguing, that's on you, not them. Number 4, they're cold and distant. The idea that Sigma males are cold and distant couldn't be further from the truth. It's just a classic case of misreading their quiet nature. Sigmas don't fill silence with meaningless chatter, and they certainly don't fake warmth to fit into social norms. This reserved demeanor often gets mistaken for emotional detachment, but what people miss is that Sigmas are laser-focused on quality over quantity in every interaction. They're not distant, they're just selective. To outsiders, their silence can feel like a wall, but it's not built out of indifference, it's built out of intention. Sigmas refuse to waste energy on shallow exchanges or superficial relationships. They don't collect acquaintances for the sake of appearances or small talk just to pass time. Instead, they save their energy for the people who truly matter to them, the ones they've carefully chosen to let into their lives. For those lucky enough to break through the Sigma's outer shell, the reward is loyalty and attention that runs deep. Sigmas don't form bonds lightly, but when they do, it's unshakable. They're the kind of people who will stand by you in the hardest times, offering support that's real, not performative. To their inner circle, Sigmas are anything but cold. They listen with intention, care deeply, and show up when it counts. The so-called distance people perceive isn't about a lack of emotion, it's about boundaries. Sigmas guard their space because they value it, not because they're incapable of connection. They're not cold, they just don't feel the need to put on a show for people who haven't earned their trust. With a Sigma, the warmth is always there. You just have to earn the right to feel it. Number 5, they're all about money and success. The myth that Sigma males are obsessed with money and success is a classic misunderstanding. Sure, they work hard and often end up doing well for themselves, but to think they're driven by wealth or status misses the entire point of who they are. For a Sigma, money isn't the prize, it's the tool. It's what allows them to live life on their terms, free from the constraints of other people's rules or expectations. Sigmas value freedom above all else. They want to call their own shots, whether that means pursuing a career they're passionate about, starting their own business, or even rejecting the traditional path altogether. Money to them is just a way to unlock autonomy. It's not the be-all, end-all. Unlike people who chase wealth to show it off or climb some imaginary social ladder, Sigmas couldn't care less about appearances. Flashy cars, designer clothes, or Instagram-worthy vacations. They might indulge if it aligns with their lifestyle, but they're not trying to impress anyone. What really drives a Sigma is the desire to live authentically. Success, in their eyes, isn't measured by a paycheck or a title. It's measured by how much control they have over their own life. They'll work hard to achieve that independence, not because they're chasing a dollar amount, but because they're chasing a life that's entirely theirs. This perspective is what makes them so different. They're not fueled by competition or societal standards. Their ambition is personal, quiet, and deeply rooted in their values. So no, Sigmas aren't all about money and success. They're about freedom, and they'll use whatever tools they need to get there. The rest, it's just noise they don't have time for. Number 6, they're selfish. Labeling Sigmas as selfish is a lazy assumption that comes from misunderstanding their priorities. Yes, they put themselves first, But it's not out of arrogance or disregard for others. It's because they know something most people overlook. You can't pour from an empty cup. Sigmas are deeply self-aware, and they understand that taking care of their own needs is essential if they're going to bring anything of value to the table. Their focus on themselves isn't about being self-centered, it's about balance. They know that constantly sacrificing their time, energy, and well-being to please others only leads to burnout and resentment. And let's face it, someone who's drained and bitter isn't exactly the best version of themselves. By prioritizing their own growth, health, and happiness, Sigmas ensure they can actually show up for the people who matter to them, fully present and ready to give. What really throws people off is how unapologetic they are about this approach. While others might feel guilty about setting boundaries, Sigmas embrace them without hesitation. They'll say no when they need to, step away when they're overwhelmed, and prioritize their goals, even if it means disappointing someone. It's not about selfishness. It's about understanding their limits and protecting their energy. Ironically, this so-called selfishness often makes them better friends, partners, and leaders. By taking care of themselves first, they can give their best to others without resentment or strings attached. Sigmas don't just survive, they thrive. And they want the people in their inner circle to thrive too. If that's selfish, then maybe the world could use a little more of it. Number 7, they're arrogant. Calling a Sigma male arrogant is a classic case of misreading the room. They're not walking around with their noses in the air or trying to prove they're better than anyone else. What you're seeing is quiet confidence, a level of self-assurance that doesn't need external validation to exist. To a Sigma, their self-worth isn't tied to applause, likes, or someone else's approval. They know who they are, and they're not about to compromise that to fit someone else's expectations. Arrogance and confidence are two very different things. Arrogance shouts, confidence doesn't need to. Sigmas don't walk into a room demanding attention or trying to dominate the space. They don't need to. Their presence alone is enough to speak for them. They don't flaunt their achievements or throw their weight around to gain respect, because their sense of value comes from within. That internal foundation makes them grounded, not grandiose. What throws people off is their refusal to shrink themselves to make others comfortable. Sigmas are unapologetically themselves, and that can be intimidating to people who rely on external validation or live by societal expectations. But just because they don't dim their light for others doesn't mean they're trying to outshine anyone. They're simply operating in their own lane, uninterested in competing with anyone but themselves. The beauty of a Sigma's confidence is its simplicity. It's not loud, boastful, or attention-seeking. It's solid and unshakable. They know their worth and don't feel the need to prove it. If someone mistakes that for arrogance, it says more about their insecurities than the Sigma's personality. Confidence without a megaphone isn't arrogance, it's maturity, and the world could use a lot more of that. Number 8, they can't handle criticism. The idea that Sigmas can't handle criticism is more fiction than fact. People see their independence and assume it comes with an oversized ego that rejects any challenge to their ideas or actions. In reality, Sigmas are not only capable of handling criticism, they actually value it, provided it comes from the right place. The catch? It has to be constructive, logical, and delivered by someone who knows what they're talking about. If the criticism is grounded in nonsense, irrelevant opinions, or plain pettiness, they'll shut it down faster than you can blink. Sigmas thrive on growth, and they know feedback is essential to that process. They're constantly refining their skills, expanding their knowledge, and improving themselves, so they welcome criticism that helps them evolve. But what they don't have time for is empty criticism from people who lack credibility or are just trying to bring them down a peg. If the critique doesn't add value or comes with an ulterior motive, Sigmas will tune it out without a second thought. This selective approach to feedback is often mistaken for being overly sensitive or dismissive, but it's actually a sign of discernment. Sigmas know that not all opinions are created equal, and they're not going to let every random comment shake their foundation. They prioritize input from people they respect, those who've earned the right to have their voices heard. It's not that Sigmas are allergic to critique, they're allergic to nonsense. Their independence isn't a shield against feedback, it's a filter. They'll gladly listen to something that helps them grow, but they won't waste their energy on criticism that's baseless, unhelpful, or meant to tear them down. If you want a Sigma to take you seriously, come with insight, not noise. Number 9, they're cynical about love. The myth that Sigmas are cynical about love couldn't be further from the truth. They're not avoiding it. They're simply not interested in the shallow, fleeting kinds of connections that the world often promotes as romance. Sigmas are deeply romantic, but their version of love isn't flashy or dramatic. It's real, raw, and built on trust, depth, and authenticity. They don't chase after crushes or indulge in the kind of infatuation that burns bright and fades quickly. They're skeptical of anything that feels temporary, superficial, or rooted in societal expectations. For Sigmas, love isn't about grand gestures or playing by the rules set by others. It's about finding someone who shares their values, who understands their need for space and independence while also offering a deep, unwavering connection. When a Sigma falls in love, it's profound and enduring, not a whirlwind romance that burns out. Their love doesn't need to be loud or over the top to be real. It's consistent, it's genuine, and it's something they're fiercely protective of. What might come across as cynicism is actually a refusal to settle for anything less than meaningful. Sigmas won't waste their time on a relationship that doesn't align with their core beliefs or that doesn't add real value to their lives. They've seen enough of the surface-level love games people play to know that not all relationships are worth pursuing. But when they find something that feels true and lasting, they're all in. Sigmas aren't cynical about love. They just don't have time for anything less than the real deal. Number 10, they are lone wolves 24/7. The idea that Sigma males are lone wolves 24/7 is one of the most exaggerated myths about them. Yes, they value their solitude and they do spend significant time on their own to recharge and reflect. But that doesn't mean they're antisocial or incapable of thriving in social settings. Sigmas understand the value of human connection, but they're selective about it. Unlike the stereotypical lone wolf, they're not shunning the world. They're simply looking for quality over quantity. Sigmas can move seamlessly between being introspective and engaging with others when it serves a purpose. They don't avoid social situations, they choose them carefully. They can be the life of the party or the quiet observer, depending on what the situation calls for. When they need to, they can be strategic and social, weaving through conversations and networking with ease. And here's the key, they do it on their terms. They'll never get caught up in small talk or waste their time with people who don't offer real value to their lives. This ability to shift between roles, introvert when alone, social strategist when needed, often leads to misunderstandings. To outsiders, it can seem like a Sigma is either distant or aloof, when in fact they're simply playing the game differently. They don't need to be constantly surrounded by people to feel fulfilled. But when they do interact, they want those interactions to matter, so no. Sigmas aren't hiding in the shadows, rejecting social interaction. They just don't feel the need to force themselves into every social situation. They understand the power of being selective and purposeful with their time and connections, and that's what makes them so effortlessly capable of navigating both the world of solitude and the world of social dynamics. In the end, the myths about Sigma males often reveal more about how society misunderstands individuality than about the men themselves. Far from being cold, arrogant, or emotionally unavailable, they are a study in quiet strength, independence, and self-awareness. Sigmas don't live to meet the world's expectations. They live to meet their own, and that's where their true power lies. They aren't allergic to connection. They simply value depth over volume. They aren't dismissive of love. They seek out authenticity and long-lasting bonds. They don't run from feedback. They embrace what can help them grow, ignoring the noise along the way. To label a Sigma male based on surface-level assumptions is to miss the entire point of who they are. They're complex, not mysterious for the sake of being mysterious, but because they understand that true individuality requires space to breathe. They move through the world without the need for applause, driven by a deep-rooted sense of self and a desire for freedom that most can only dream of. So before you buy into the myths, take a moment to look deeper, and perhaps you'll see a person who isn't as elusive or distant as they first appear, but someone living authentically and unapologetically in a world that often forgets the power of both. If you've enjoyed uncovering the truth behind the Sigma male and want more insights that break free from the usual clichés, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, You won't want to miss what's coming next. More unfiltered, brutally honest content that goes straight to the heart of what truly matters. Join the community of those who are tired of surface-level talk and ready for something deeper. Subscribe now and let's keep peeling back the layers together. Bye for now and see you in the next video.